of years ago that we looked at our congregation and we looked at our village, and we realised that the doorstep was too high and it was difficult for people who are not used to church to come. So we looked at our community, and the first group of people we looked at were those who were home alone. Some were elderly, some were alone for different reasons. So we decided to make a lunch, and it was a small lunch to start with. There were about 15 of us. And then it grew and grew because people heard about it and they brought their friends. We looked at the young couples, young marrieds, who don't come to church either. They're all very tired. They work about 50, 60 miles away, and it's bed and breakfast really for them. And they don't really mix, they don't know anybody much. And thought, how can we reach them? So we cook a meal on a Friday night at 6:30 when we get home from work. And then after the meal, we have a time of fellowship. We have a film or a testimony or gospel stories, quiz, sometimes a quiz. They never know what's going to happen.
Storyteller. So
they can't, yes, we have a super storyteller. We've had all sorts of things. They never know what's going to come, so they can't ever guess. And then there's a prayer time, and it's a really relaxed time. And people come to that who wouldn't come to church at all, but it is Catholic church, it is a church service as such. We looked at the next group of people. I spotted all these young men standing outside the school frozen stiff, and I thought, what can we do for them? So we opened up the church as a playgroup. Several have brought the babies to be christened since then, and due to that, Sue, our minister, comes in fairly regularly, and she gets alongside them and gets to know them, and they're warming. They're definitely warming. One lady particularly was quite against us. She thought, oh, this religion business, but she's really, really warming. It's drops in buckets, what we call it, putting a drop in a bucket. That's all we're doing at the minute. It's getting alongside these people, breaking down barriers, and letting them get to know us, and then we can share with them. But each time there is gospel literature given out. The children have gone home this time with a children's little leaflet about the Queen. There's always something on, because otherwise we're not doing it just to feed them and waste our time. We're wasting our time if we're doing it at a human level. The aim really is to share Jesus with them.
That the problem that we've still got now is space.
But when I came here, there'd been a lot of conversations going on with other churches in the locality, Anglican churches, but other denominations too, and they'd kind of got nowhere, and they'd gone on for years and years and years. Do you remember,
I
Sue?
do.
You were part of those, weren't
Certainly
you?
was common ground.
Well, even before that, there were just meetings I went to at the church a mile down the road at Anlaby. And we seemed to go round and round in circles and never get anywhere. And eventually all of this sort of stuff ground to a halt. And as Sue says, common ground happened, which was discussions with the Anglican church across the road. And for various reasons, it just fell out of bed. And we were determined here that we wanted to do stuff for the community at this church. And so we resolved to get on with our own scheme. So out of all of that was launched the Ignition project. And the first phase of the Ignition project has actually happened, and we're now looking forward to the second phase of it. The first phase was about putting an extension on the front of the church, and that gradually developed and evolved, and we ended up with a coffee shop. We now have a 6-day-a-week coffee shop running on the front of our church premises, but the space doubles up as use for church purposes as well. But the main thing about it, certainly from my point of view, is that it attracts a huge, huge number of people from the community.
I think the big thing is that the members of the church use the coffee shop as well, considerable amounts.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that use it during the week, and of course that's the mission, because they're mixed in with all these other people that are using it. And we've started a once a month event on a Wednesday night called Face to Face, which is when basically the coffee shop's open in the evening. And it's just open in the normal way, and the public come in, and we put on extras like, you know, karaoke type Christian songs. I think the coffee shop's really been a lot more successful than I ever thought it would be.
I think a lot of people have said, people who were quite antagonistic towards the concept in the first place have completely changed their ideas. The second phase of the operation is again going to be very much community focused. It's got to be, because apart from anything else, on a financial front, we will rely upon grants from organisations in the community. And organisations in the community, by definition, by the nature of what they are, will not put money into Christian mission work overtly. So we have to be doing stuff here which is community linked, it's community service, because that's the only way we can raise the money we need to be able to do the missional work that we want to do alongside the community service.
It's morally difficult for some of us as well, because our sister church now at Selby Street is looking after the homeless. So this morning, for example, I've been dealing with a chap who lives under the bush in Selby Street, next door to the church.
And so, you know, it's now a sister church to ourselves, really, and it's technically it's a class of this church at Anlaby Park, and so that's why people from here are actually pitching in.
And added to that, I think, you know, the other thing is, Steve, I'm sure you agree, we need to be up to date, and you know, our buildings need to be attractive to ask people to come to.
Yeah.
And if we're hoping to be a Christian community hub, people are not going to come if it's freezing cold with a leaking roof.
Yeah.
So we do have to do something about it anyway, apart from anything else.
Yeah.
The church had been through quite a dip, really. I think of it as a kind of slough of despond, because there were plans 8 years ago that a private developer would take over the whole site, demolish the current premises and build a small community chapel. That was just as the credit crunch really hit, and the developer pulled out at the last minute, which left everybody completely uncertain as to what the role of the church was. So there were a few difficult years while people began to work through what we could do. And then the circuit appointed a new minister and a deacon to work with him with a specific brief to look at how the church here could relate more to the community. And a piece of research was done, a community audit, which showed up, among other things, that there were quite high levels of loneliness, both among older people and young mums who had difficulty with building relationships. So as a starter, we started the community cafe on a Wednesday morning for a six-week trial period during the summer holidays, and it's never closed since. We open over Christmas and every time all through the school holidays, sometimes with difficulty because we rely on volunteers, but it's met such a need, and actually from that has spawned all sorts of other contacts in the community, and other groups have started. We had a community art group that was funded by the council, and out of that there is now an informal craft group that meets. That I was just talking to the lady who runs it at the moment, said people don't have to have any skills come along. Part of the purpose is just to sit and chat, and it meets a real community need. And other formal or less formal community groups, we've got a good relationship with the local councillors, and it has become a real community centre in that sense.
We've also started Messy Church just over a year ago. We have one of our teenage girls who was on the micro IPS scheme, and she chose as her project in her church to actually get Messy Church off the ground. And she has organised this for a full year. She does a lot of the planning. We meet regularly, and she has ideas for the craft to make sure we all know what we're doing, and food and everything. So she's finished her year now, and she's off to university in the autumn. But obviously we're keeping going with Messy Church, and we've had a lot of mums here and their children today in school holidays who actually come to Messy Church as well. And because of the need, they've now started a youth club as well on a Friday evening. So
that's one of the things I find fascinating, that there is an overlap between everything that's going on. When Messy Church started, I was concerned that there would be some of the long-standing members who would feel this was a way of getting people to come on a Sunday morning. And I tried to emphasise that it was a way of developing a new community, a new congregation. But actually we've got quite a number of the families who came to Messy Church who now come on a Sunday morning as well. And you will meet them on a Wednesday and all sorts of other community groups. There is such an overlap between what is going on that there's a real sense of a complete community, really, just with different aspects at different times. And I find that extremely fascinating and healthy, and a good sign that God is active among his people in all kinds of ways.
Well, it's always been a really busy church, always been let out to groups like Slimming World and Brownies and all sort of community groups. And we got to a point where actually the building wasn't really big enough. And so we decided to build the Welcome Centre, which took a long time to do, but because of hard work from people here, but also the generosity of the district and the circuit and grants, the Welcome Centre was opened 2 years ago. We knew that there were lots and lots of needs in the community, but it was a question of absolutely finding out what those needs were, to use the building and to use our resources for mission. So we decided to have what we call a shout-out day, and some of the musicians from the church went out outside the shops and played music, which attracted people, and then others from the church talked to people as they passed to establish what the needs were in the community. We also went to the doctors and to other groups in the village. And we established that the needs very much were, well, we wanted to look for 3 needs actually. One was for facilities for young families, and particularly for dads, just to come and play and get together socially as well. The other need was for older people to be able to just come and gather, not to belong to a group like a pensioners association or something like that, but just to come and gather conversation. And the other was for youth. And so we started to establish different groups. We also realised that lots of the groups that were running in the church building are sort of separate. You know, there were Brownies running, Guides running, Slimming World, French-tastic, but all separate. And yet we were all doing God's work. It's all about mission. So the church council appointed me as a mission coordinator. And my brief was to try to establish a relationship amongst all the groups in the church, using the building, so that we feel like one community rather than separate ones. As a church, we have had various activities going on which would bring the groups together. So we had a mission day where every group did a sort of display of what they were about, and then we shared that together. We had an arts festival in which all the groups were invited to do something creative, nothing professional, just creative work. Again, we got involved together on that. And then we had a family fun day, and increasingly the groups have started to build up a relationship, getting to know each other better. We've reached a point now where we feel that that's developing well, and we need now to start to nurture the families that are coming in and the other groups that are coming in, particularly the families. And so we have appointed now a mission enabler who is experienced in nurturing young families. I've done what I can do, I think, in building up the relationship, but I can't take them on that step further. So we're committed now to actually employing someone to do that, and that role starts in September, so that's our next move, really.
Well, our story started last summer, I guess, in the summer of 2015, when we discovered a large issue with the roof, a very significant issue, which meant that we had to erect some scaffolding in here to support the roof. So once we discovered the issue with the roof last year, we looked to see what we could do with this building, see how we can repurpose it, if you like, for the community at large, and to make it smaller as a church community as well. So we put that to the church, and almost to a man and boy, they said, look, let's do something with this building, because we can't see it permanently closed. We then set about engaging an architect, and we have some very exciting feasibility plans, which would see the pews which you see around us removed. These pews, box pews, are historic. They are original to the building. To remove the pews downstairs and to create a horizontal subdivision at gallery level, and to create two distinct spaces in this building, with a smaller space here on this level for worship as a church. So our challenge now is to see what we can do to work constructively with the authorities to ensure that we can see this building be sustainable, financially sustainable, for worship, for mission and outreach going forward into the future, as it was designed to do 200 years ago. But we believe there is a strong future if there is a will for people to make those decisions and for us to see a new future for this building.
Properly appreciate all that's happened here, we probably do need to think about what it was like beforehand. Dark, unwelcoming at the front door, coming into a chapel that was equally dark, wasn't it? Fixed pews, side aisles, real tightly packed aisles, and that impacted on weddings. You know, bride and the father coming down the aisle and bride and groom going back up the aisle were really hard to do. I think it was even a time when there was a coffin that got caught, wasn't it? We couldn't get in because the coffin was too large. So lots of good reasons why it needed to change. Poor electric heating, and just not versatile enough. This area where we're sitting now, the communion area, was far smaller. It was lower down, so you couldn't see people here. So basically, you had to lead the service from the pulpit, and that was it really. And if you wanted to get from this part of the building to the back for coffee after worship, well, people had to go out the front door and all the way around. The alternative was to go through a maze of corridors.
Back in 2007, we decided that the congregation wanted us to go ahead with developing the building. And so we put together a group that became known as the Building Investigation Group, BIG. And they looked at the different ways in which we could develop this building. We looked at a basic programme of maintenance of the chapel itself. We looked at a programme of developing the chapel itself. And we looked at a programme of developing the whole of the church centre. And we went into details of all of those 3 levels of programme, kept reporting back to the congregation, asking them what they thought, telling them what we'd found out, costing it all, until eventually we had 3 schemes that we offered the congregation for Church Council ultimately to decide upon. And Church Council, with the backing of all the congregation and the church family, decided that they wanted to go ahead with full development of the whole building. And so the building investigation group then became the building implementation group. So we still retained the name BIG. We liked that, the BIG group. And we went into further details then for planning for the development of the whole building. There were complications because, of course, we had to go through Leeds City Council and the Listed Buildings Advisory Committee. And our wonderful idea of having a glass porch on the front of the building didn't work. They wouldn't accept it because it was a listed building in a conservation area. And so we had to rethink that. And our rethinking led us to develop the link that linked together the church with the rest of the building. And what a good thing that we had to rethink that, because the link area is the most wonderful meet and greet area that we can use 7 days a week, not just when the chapel itself is in use.
4 years on, we now truly have a community building. Over 40 organisations use our building throughout a month. That's about 300 to 800 footfall almost every week. They range from table tennis, keep fit classes, coffee shop on a Wednesday, coffee shop on a Saturday. We have disabled groups, many different disparate types of groups using our facilities.
As a church, we have stepped out in faith. It's been hard work at times, but that hard work has been rewarded. We feel extremely blessed. We've had the opportunity to see our numbers grow, both not only the use of the building, but in worship and in membership. At a time when other parts of our connection have declined in membership, we've managed to grow, which is encouraging. The age profile has changed in the church as well. We have more young families, and as a consequence, we're seeing more baptisms than we have done before, well, certainly in the last 10 or 20 years. So lots of good things. Teenage groups, our teenage group is strong. And 2 of our teenagers became stewards, age 14, and are still serving now, age 16. So we hope that we've been an encouragement to others as well, others in our district, but others locally as well, including our near neighbours at Boston Spa as they are embarking on their redevelopment scheme, as they reach out to their community.
I think in terms of other churches who sometimes get a bit down in the dumps about the way things are going, as we do here sometimes as well, you've just got to keep that kind